Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Data Standard Audio Experience. On our show today, we have Jacob Adler, a data analyst at Dutchie. And today we're speaking about analytics at Dutchie and data science at Caesars Entertainment. So welcome to the show, Jacob. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Catherine.
Yeah, and could you just go ahead and tell us more about your story and tell us a little bit about what led you to your role today?
Yeah, so my name is Jacob Adler. I'm a data analyst at Dutchie. Real quick, Dutchie is a software as a service e-commerce offering for cannabis dispensaries. So dispensaries, they're brick and mortar operations. They need to take online orders, whether that's for pickup, for curbside, or even if they offer third-party delivery integration. We help them conduct business over the internet. And so before I was at Dutchie, I was working in kind of marketing analytics and CRM at a startup called GoPuff. And previously before then, I was working as a data scientist at Caesars Entertainment in Las Vegas.
Yeah, so super fun stuff that you've been able to work for in the past and that you're currently working on right now. And before we get into the main topic today, I wanted to ask about your experience at Dutchie. So what was it like to be one of the first hires at Dutchie and being able to see it grow over the years?
Yeah, so I joined Dutchie, end of last August as the first data hire when the company was at around 100 employees. And by that time, not having anyone in data previously had been kind of tough, on some different teams. Previously, the closest thing they had to business intelligence and data analytics was, running analytical queries off MongoDB, which is more of like a document store, not really geared towards those analytical type of queries that you do need in like dashboarding and things like that. And they were using a tool called Grow, which I think had some nice integrations, but was still limiting in some of the ways. So we were seeing a lot of queries and dashboards. A lot of times they would hit timeouts and they wouldn't even run. And when they did run, they looked obviously wrong. And so we were having people with distrust in data. We were having people feel blocked by not having enough information to do their jobs. That's where I came in. I met with several different teams and stakeholders to really understand what their needs were. We had the opinion starting off that, the business intelligence tool and function had to work for everybody if it was going to work at all. And given the way that a lot of our data was linked together between departments, that made sense, as well, coming in from that perspective. So in one of my first months, we led 3 different vendor selection processes. We had to get a data warehousing tool, a cloud-based analytical data warehouse. And we needed an ETL tool, basically a way to move data from third-party data sources, as well as temporarily from production databases and systems to, our analytics data warehouse. And 3, we needed a place to visualize that data. And so we ended up coming out of that process, going with Snowflake for the data warehousing, with Fivetran for the ETL, and Looker for data visualization. And so a fairly modern data stack. And from there, it allowed us to get quickly to work, doing the first rounds of data modeling. We're big believers at Dutchie in DBT, data build tool, which is a way basically to orchestrate, SQL-based data transformations, cleaning, and data modeling, and has been, really successful and worked well for our use cases. And then also working with stakeholders to develop the first rounds of dashboards, metrics. And really what's so important when you're just setting up and hooking things up in the company is just doing math and making sure that things are tracking and centralizing information in a way that helps people, do their jobs. And so we had our soft launch of that tool, in October last year, the full launch in January, did a bunch of trainings that went really well. And we brought on our first data engineer as well in February. And he and I have been hard at work on setting up, best practices, style guides, workflows, things like that. And even we don't often think about DevOps for data analytics, but it's been super helpful to set up containerized development environments, in-house continuous integration, all sorts of things like that to help the analytics team, just work our fastest and really make it easier as we scale up our team a lot in the next several months.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And it's clear that you've been able to have a lot of experiences with your work at Dutchie. And I wanted to also talk about your past work at Caesars as well. So can you tell us a bit about your experiences there?
Sure. And so for anyone who's not familiar, so Caesars Entertainment, at the time that I was there was, a large corporation, operating, I think about 50 casinos across the United States, corporate headquarters in Las Vegas. And in that Las Vegas office, there was like an 80-person analytics department. which was really cool to be a part of. There were several different teams working in different functions. We had gaming analytics, we had marketing analytics, we had casino marketing for like VIPs, we had a hospitality and hotel group as well. And I sat on a specialized data science team that really handled the highest priority, highest value, and most technical projects that would come across to the analytics department. And while I was at Caesars, I had the opportunity to work on some really interesting project topics, that were really diverse in nature. Things like macroeconomic forecasts, things like forecasting like the ATM demand, because ATMs and cash are very important in casinos, but also things like fraud detection, player skill assessment, both in terms of we could do that through SQL queries as well as through machine learning applications as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And can you tell us a bit about this data pipeline that you were able to build for Caesars NFL play for rewards at when you were at Caesars Entertainment?
Absolutely. So at some point in 2019, Caesars actually became the official casino partner of the NFL. And corporate marketing was thinking through what was the best promotion that would be, really a nice way to kick off that partnership. And one of the inspirations that they had was McDonald's Monopoly, which was the idea that people could go into McDonald's or place orders for, burgers or any other type of food or product. And sometimes they would receive stickers or badges. And sometimes the badges would be just for, like a free fries. And then they ranged all the way up, if you got the right set, up to like $1 million. And so we had a similar thought process as well. So there's 32 teams in the NFL spread across 8 divisions. And so the general theme was, all right, if you can collect all 32 badges for the teams and all 8 division badges, you would win $1 million. And the way that you'd earn those badges was just spending money at a Caesars property, whether that was through gaming, whether that was through hotel, whether that was through restaurants or other things like that. And we had, data basically that was measuring the actual spend and rewards consumption from those guests. And so they reached out marketing to the data science team and asked if we'd be able to help basically assign those pieces, do the simulations, productionalize all of that work, and help really take this project and make it a reality. And so this was definitely, a really interesting experience to work cross-functionally as well as really iteratively, where sometimes the requirements would change rapidly and we had to adjust. Sometimes, there would be a hypothesis that we wanted to test and we'd see, all right, how did simulations, change over that as well? And so, ultimately, what I did was I wrote the algorithm in the series of scripts that actually went through and said, all right, here's how many pieces need to be assigned based on, the previous consumption and spend by guests, and actually say, okay, here's the number of pieces, here are the pieces that we're going to assign. And basically like we had a shuffle operation and we'd assign them from there, send them over to the app team, and the app team would then surface them in the Caesars app for guests to actually to look through. And so it definitely was a lot of pressure if you messed up, right? That if we had any sort of bug in our operation, it's live. People are going to think they've won $1 million and we're going to pay out, $1 million in that case. So it was, very high stakes, in that sense. But, it was also a really successful project. We saw such incredible buy-in, from guests. I think, someone estimated it was like worth something like $25 million in incremental revenue. And it felt really nice to, be one of the people that helped make this project a reality, and a really successful and engaging promotion for guests and customers.
Yeah, and that's a super creative way to really get more people to kind of come and visit the Vegas area to, participate in this kind of event. And but how soon was it until the first person kind of won that grand prize?
So I'm not sure anyone actually did win. I would have to double check on that. But it was a limited time promotion. So it wasn't necessarily until until someone won it or until X number of people won it. It was, I think it was 90 days, something like that, to see if you can win. And so it was really interesting to see all the different engagement that we were seeing coming in through the promotion during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And how was your experience different at Caesars Entertainment in comparison to what you do today at Dutchie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, with Caesars, it was so great. So Caesars was actually written up like in the Harvard Business Review, early in the 2000s as one of the organizations that was really taking data and analytics was one of the early adopters of doing that in the professional world. And I think that analytics culture really, stood up over a couple decades. And so it was great to come into a place and see analytics very well established, in somewhat of an end state, in a very mature spot, because it also meant that people, in the business could come to us with very well thought out proposals and plans to be able to do, really advanced and sophisticated data science concepts and projects. As well, when you have an 80-person department, you have a lot more flexibility to take on more circular projects that are, I think, less likely to be successful, but potentially have more reward in certain areas. And when you're a one-person team, you have to have production. And so that's definitely been one of our, our different, our differences between working at Dutchie versus working at Caesars, is that with Dutchie, it's, as well as with the startup and, business intelligence and, data culture isn't as fleshed out yet. It's super important that we get stuff done and help out people now, rather than working on some projects that in some cases we don't have the data for. Because as much as I love, data science and machine learning, there's a lot that we can just eliminate with SQL queries and good data visualization that get us 75, 80% of where we need to go in much less time. And that's always great that we can turn around and share knowledge with coworkers without needing to go down the rabbit hole and tune hyperparameters and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Super great stuff that you've been able to work with. And what final advice do you have for those who are interested in getting into more of an analytical field?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of advice I'd have is to learn SQL. And I think colleges and boot camps are starting to catch up on this a little bit, but there were just so many more opportunities in classes when I was in school to learn R for academic statistics than even R for analytics, or Python for analytics, or SQL for really interacting with databases. But SQL is just so universally used, across the business landscape. And, regardless of how proficient you plan to get or are with, R or Python or any other tool like that, it's just super helpful to be able to have that skill, to be able to go into the database and grab what you need, because it is much more likely, I think, to get you a job, immediately if you do have that self-sufficient SQL skill. Even if you're going to be, a financial analyst or a product manager, having SQL is something that can help get you to that next level of compensation, roles, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of different fields are really using SQL to just do great things in the data tech field. So great advice there. And so Jacob, what is something that the community can do for you at the Data Standard?
Yeah, so we are hiring, at Dutchie at multiple levels. So if you're a data analyst, senior analyst, manager, interested in data analytics, interested in working in the intersection of cannabis and tech, definitely check out our website for, the most up-to-date links of job postings.
Yeah, perfect. And it's super interesting field to be working with as well.
Absolutely.
And I want to say thank you so much, Jacob, for joining us today. Where can everyone find you online to connect with you?
Yeah, you can search me up on LinkedIn. I think my URL is just Adler Jacob. You could probably just find me with Jacob Adler Dutchie as well.
Yeah, awesome. And to our audience, for more information on the Data Standard, you can find us at www.datastandard.io, as well as on our LinkedIn and YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Jacob, for joining us. It was such a pleasure to hear about all of your fun experiences that you've been able to have throughout your career. So thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much, Catherine.